That was probably the best thing that ever happened. That just drove me in another direction. Now, a lot of my friends that were in this business quit. They went belly up and they left. But I'm glad I stuck with it. I'm glad I shifted. You got to constantly be shifting in this business.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman. I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this show, I need you to do one little favor for me and all of our other listeners and leave us that rating and review. I want your honest feedback of what you like about the show, but also let us know if there's anything we can do to make you work harder for your investing goals. And if this is your first time listening, or for some strange reason you just haven't done it yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Paul Lizell. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Paul Lizell is a real estate investor and has purchased properties in 44 of 50 states since 2001. Now, he is the founder of REOauctionacademy.com, where they teach how to buy from online auctions, bank REOs, and off the MLS. He is also the founder of the Crypto Degen DAO LLC, and where I educate people on cryptocurrencies, NFTs, staking, and the future of money. I said I educate, obviously I mean where he educates. Let's welcome to the show, Paul Lizell.
John, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, Paul, I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. I'll go to the beginning when I first got into this business, and I started investing in the very end of 2001. First property I bought was in Norristown, Pennsylvania. It was a HUD property, right off the HUDhomestore.com. That's kind of how I got started into the whole bank REO gig here. And I was working, ironically, for a bank at the time. I was working for Citizens Bank, and I was a business development officer there, just doing loans, lines of credit, and mortgages and stuff for business owners out there. And so I did that part-time. First one I bought with a partner. We paid $29,500. We each put $15,000 into it, and we sold it for $69,000 a few months later. And we split $30K. It was great. That started my foray into investing, into the fix and flipping game. And a little bit more background on me, which led me to the fix and flip to start, was from junior high on all through college. I worked for my uncle, who's a general contractor. So I got to do roofing, siding, windows, doors, plumbing, electrical, you name it, I did it, concrete. We did everything. So that gave me a great background in it, which is very, very helpful when you get into the fix and flip side, because you understand what the properties need. So I did that all the way up until 2004 when I quit my job. I was doing some fix and flips on the side. This was crazy. Go to work 8 to 5, come home, eat dinner, go back out, work on the property till around 2 a.m, come back, rinse and repeat, and do it again until the job is done. Then in 2004, what I did is I quit my job because my goal was to get 18 months worth of living expense income in my savings account. So if I had 18 months, I made this plan with my wife. If I had 18 months, that gave me a year to go through it. If it worked, great, I'm good. If not, I had 6 months to find another job to replace that income. That was pretty much my perspective into it there. So obviously I never went back into the workplace. I'm basically unemployable right now for sure. And kept doing fix and flips up into the financial crisis of 2008. And I did a couple wholesale deals there, here and there too, right? If I had too many flips going on, I would wholesale a deal here or there. And that was really quick and easy. But I was looking at it from the wrong perspective. So I was like, I made 10 or 15 on that, but I could have made 40 or 50 if I flipped it. Wrong perspective, right? The speed of money is important. So I got crushed during the financial crisis, lost a ton of money on a ton of different deals out there. And I decided, I got to switch. I got to flip what I'm doing. So I switched to 90% wholesaling, 10% fix and flip, buy and hold combination there. And during that 2009 to 2013, you remember when the market was just down, down, down. There was bank REO properties all over the place. I was winning. I was actually buying properties where the bank was paying for me to buy it. I was picking up for $100, $500. and I was getting a commission on top of it, of, $1,500, $2,500. So, and I would turn around, sell the property, and just wholesaling. We were literally just wholesaling at that time. Then around occasional fix and flip, like I said. Then around 2013, I started changing. I still did a wholesale, the majority, but I started changing more of the buy and hold, fix and flip, had some rentals, did some Airbnbs during that time. And that continues now, but I'm going back to just pretty much wholesaling, keeping a few fix and flips that I want as rentals. I have a 12-unit Wyoming I'm actually selling, but I have a 5-unit that I'm going to keep. I have a single up in Moorcroft, Wyoming, outside of Gillette, I'm going to keep. And I have a few down here in Florida where I'm going to do what's called a pad split. You may know about that, John, what a pad split is, but it's a whole other thing that should hit your audience. It's brand new. When I say brand new, about a year old. I think they've been a little bit more than a year in the game, maybe a year and a half. But that's my new model where I'm turning, say, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home into an 8-bedroom, 2-bath home where I'm renting rooms by the week. So $150 to $200, $250 if it has its own bathroom, and you're renting to the week, but you've got to get these properties in spots where it's close to shopping, it's close to public transportation, and say you're near a dollar store, because a lot of your tenants might be dollar store workers, dollar store managers, or a Burger King assistant manager. So that's kind of the target with pad split there, which is something that a lot of multifamily people are starting to get into because of the ease of the financing, because it's a single family financing game. But you're kind of doing the multifamily thing with that.
Yeah, listen, we're definitely going to come back to the pad split. I want to start where you started, right? So you talked about working as a banker, and prior to that, working with your uncle, doing some odds and ends type jobs in construction and rehabs. But that background kind of made it easier for you to kind of do some deals on the side. First
Yeah.
deal you bought from the HUD store, made 30K, split that with a partner, and from there you were kind of off to the races doing this
Yeah.
on the side until 2004 when you quit your job full time and decided to do the flipping, giving yourself a little grace, saying, "Hey, let's give myself some time to see if I can, build up my income and replicate what I'm making in a year." And obviously, you were able to do that. Transitioned a couple times in your strategy, and ultimately moved more towards wholesaling,
Mhm.
where sounds like that's the core of your business today, with some rentals and really cherry picking, identifying deals you want to keep in your portfolio while the bulk of your work is wholesaling. Did I capture all that correctly?
100% right. 100%.
Awesome, awesome, good.
And this
Um,
business, you got to constantly be changing. If you're not looking at your business, I used to look at it twice a year. At the end of this
yeah,
second quarter, I would look at it, see what worked, and adjust in the second. Can't do that now. It moves too quick. Had been to the point where I was doing it quarterly, but now you got to do it monthly. You really got to look
yeah.
at it numbers monthly.
I want to talk about that because I think that's really important. For those folks who are listening, many of them are multifamily investors. And
Mhm.
when I talk to multifamily investors, one thing I hear all the time is how challenging it is to find a deal that works, right? So,
Yes.
so many of us are just banging our heads against the wall, analyzing deals, being far off from kind of what the broker wants or what the seller
Mhm.
wants and where our numbers are. And many of us have decided or have continued to think about changing strategies. Talk to me about that. Going back to you mentioned in 2008, you kind of got crushed like a lot of other investors. And that made you look at your business model and say, hey, maybe we should wholesale deals more as opposed to having so many to flip because maybe the risk tolerance is there. And you also mentioned just the ability to recycle money, right? Just the
Yes.
velocity of cash. Talk to me about kind of your approach when it comes to looking at your business, analyzing what's working, what's not, and deciding when it's time to make a pivot.
Yes, no, great question. And this changes seasonally for me in that we pick up the majority of our properties somewhere between the end of September and early March, because the banks, what they do, they look to get rid of everything off their books by the end of the year if they can. But of course, a lot bleeds into the first quarter of the next year. And so we get a good bit of inventory at that point. Most of it we're just listing and listing on the MLS, right? Because we're taking them down with bank-owned properties. Give you guys a little bit of background here. You can't assign contracts. You can do creative stuff like put it in an LLC and sell the LLC to somebody else. But most investors, in my experience that I've dealt with, don't want to buy your LLC because it wasn't necessarily formed the way they wanted to. Then I experiment with putting them in trusts, and yeah, that can help and that can work as well. But for bank-owned properties, best thing to do is just buy it, take it down, and then resell it. So instead of wholesaling it on Craigslist or on Facebook Marketplace or blasting it out to our list there, if we throw it on the MLS, we're opening it up to probably 80% more people, that can really look at it. And we're looking for the end buyer that's looking for something that they can get equity in, right? A little fix up and they can live in there during that time. For the millennials right now, I think that's kind of what they're starting to target because it's so hard for them to get in with rates so high right now. So they're looking for something they can get that has some equity, that's a fixer that hopefully over time that they could turn around and sell down the road. If they want to upgrade, they have equity there to upgrade. So our model during that time of the year, we look to get into a little bit of wholesaling and then just listing on the MLS. After quarter two, we will wholesale a lot more. We will try to go direct to investor a little bit more often, but we're still throwing a majority on the MLS just because that's to maximize our profits, right? Generally, we're going to make more on the MLS than we're going to make just doing a direct wholesale to an investor.
Yeah, so on the exit, you're saying, hey, listed on the MLS, you've got millennials or younger buyers who are looking for, a little fixer up, they can put in the work. Or you have investors, maybe a little bit later in the year, second quarter, investors are looking for those deals. But again,
Yeah,
the MLS is a great place to find it. I want to talk about how you're coming across those deals, right? You mentioned you're getting these from the bank, and you are the founder of REO Auction Academy. And I know you've got some great information on the website to help people. But at a high level, what does that process look like? I mean, I'm sure we'd all love to get a phone call from the bank saying, hey, we got this property. I want to sell it to you for 50 cents on the dollar. Sign us all up, right? But talk to us
right.
about what that process really looks like.
So the process, and we use VAs with it now, but I want to give you the process of what I used to do myself back in the day. So anybody looking to get in here, how they can do it and kind of mimic what I do. So most of them we buy off, whether it's auction.com, Hubzoo, Zone.com, HUD Home Store, Hudson and Marshall, Auction Network, Realty Bid. Those are major purchasing websites that we use out there. We do use the MLS still though too, John, and we still buy from other wholesalers too, because we find there's arbitrage. We can get a good deal from the wholesaler. We can list it on the MLS and we can still make a few bucks on it. But those are the sites we use. And what I'll do is I'll go through and maybe I'll target a region, an area that I want to be in. I've especially becoming a little bit more regionalized now since post-COVID, because it's where people are leaving from, where are they going to, and where the trends long-term are where people are moving to. And, you got the Carolinas, you got Florida, you got Tennessee, you got Texas, the Sun Belt, Nevada, it's still, all these states where people are going to. That's kind of where you want to be, especially if you're going to buy and hold for any period of time, right? Because that's where equity should be created down the road, as opposed to Illinois, where people are leaving, or New York or New Jersey, Rhode Island, all these Northeast states. More people are leaving there, and California, right? And plus, it's hard to compete in that California market there. So we'll find a particular region, and then we'll pull down all those properties, take a look at them. We'll analyze them. And honestly, I use Zillow, right? So if a property, say the starting bid is 50,000 and we're looking at all comps here and the ARV, the after repair value is 200,000. Well, I know I might have something to play with here, assuming I can figure out repairs. So if it looks like it's a prospect that goes on my list for properties to bid on, and then I'll contact a local agent in the area. And I'm not just going to contact any agent. I don't want a Keller Williams agent. I don't want a Coldwell Banker. I want to find a small mom pa shop out there who knows that market really, really well. And a lot of times when we call them, John, we'll tell them the property and they're like, oh, I know the property. That used to be a rental that, one of our agents had. So often, especially in these small markets that we find. So they know the area really well. The one, they know the area. The two, they know the demand and they know the value spot on. Their numbers that these agents give us are generally the best. So the two best agent referrals that I can say to go look for are bank REO agents, especially ones that have 5+ years experience because their numbers are solid, and small mom pop brokerages. Don't look for the big box guys. One, they're not motivated for investors. They do not want to work with investors. You want to find a younger, newer agent that's hungry for business and will work with investor, understanding that's going to be repeat business. Because most of the ones I deal with, they're getting a commission on a buy side and then getting a commission on a resale side. So what happens is because they get that double commission, they're so willing to work with us that they actually manage our rehab too. And we use their contractors. Their contractors have been far better than any contractors I can find on my own out there. They know the people And you're far better off doing this. And let me tell you from just past experience, because I've been burnt finding people on my own. I've never, not once, I'm going to knock wood when I say this, been burnt by one of my bank REO agents or realtor referrals, because they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. These agents are giving them business, repeat business, where they don't have to pay for leads, right? So these have been the best resources. And, then I'll bid. So let's say going back to that property, 200K, I could bid it up to 100K if I know it only needs 20K in repairs. And then I've got margin right there, fix and flip margin or wholesale margin.
Yeah, a lot of great information. You first of all talked about, going on some of these different websites. I know you mentioned a few, Hubzu and, RealtyBid and others that you mentioned there. But going on the website, understanding, the market, picking the regions based on the demographic trends, where are people going, where's the buzz, where's the infrastructure going to be there? So maybe a little bit less in, Illinois and some of the markets there, a little bit more
Right.
in the Carolinas where that growth pattern is, finding that market and then looking small. I love your point on contacting a local agent, not the big brokerage firms, but someone who's small, someone who's hungry, or the bank REO agents. They're
Yeah.
going to be able to talk to you. They're going to understand the market. They're going to be able to tell you about the property, the location, help you with the numbers. And then your point there that I think is brilliant and a great insight. They're going to have great connections. And if you have those individuals, they'll be able to help you get your team, your contractors, and other folks because this is what they do. This is their business, and those contractors are not going to bite them because they're working with them and they know how trusted it is for them to get that. I think the other thing is, especially with the bank REO agents, those contractors are vetted to a higher level than just investors, right? Like investors, your Uncle Tommy might be pretty handy and maybe you want to give him a shot. But, to be someone who's qualified to work with the banks, usually you have to have a little bit more pedigree. So that's going to help you find the right people as well. I was going to ask you because you mentioned earlier in your background
Mhm.
that you did a lot of the hard work, the flipping, right? You were working a
Right.
day job, leaving, then in the night you were going to flip and rehab, so you were really hands on. But I hear
Yes.
you now talking about finding these deals, working with the agents, letting them find the contractor, and kind of managing the flips from afar. One, what was that shift like for you to kind of go from being hands on, the main person doing the work physically yourself, not even just overseeing the contract, but you doing the work, to now overseeing projects from multiple states?
Yeah, that was a big transition. It's a mental hurdle you got to overcome there. And the mental hurdle was fairly easy for me for one reason, because back when I originally started, I'm from about 45 minutes north of Philadelphia before I moved to Florida 2.5 years ago here. So I started buying in that market, right? Then I started buying properties in New Jersey, Delaware, going further west towards Pittsburgh. And what I found was, it's kind of easy to buy anywhere and do this. This is back 2008, 9, 10, when I really started to do the whole virtual thing, the whole virtual wholesaling. Then I started buying in Indiana, Ohio. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to see these properties. Matter of fact, it became a challenge for me. I wanted to get as many properties as I could. Never wanted to see them. Never wanted to, even local ones. Like I want to be able to buy them, do everything from either my office or my bedroom, wherever we were doing it from. Right. I wanted to not have to go there. So that challenge was pretty easy for me to overcome than going into other markets and doing some rehabbing. But high scale, doing full massive gut rehabs, they're still difficult from afar. You really need a project manager to handle those for sure. And I did them on my 12 unit, my 5 unit, massive ones. I spent 450, 500,000 on the one, and I spent another 200,000 on the other one because they were complete gut, some foundation work and stuff too. But I had good contractors there, and I had a great agent who managed that rehab for me and kind of like gave me pictures every day and updates on what was going on. So it's one of those things I highly recommend. You don't do full scale rehabs. If you're going to do something out of state, out of market, start with a wholesale where you're just going to do paint, carpet, flooring, maybe new appliances, maybe new countertops, new tub, toilet type thing, where you're doing more minor stuff and getting it done quick than doing a full scale rehab. So you can
Yeah, I
get
think
even a lot of
that's
cost.
I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people, right? Especially those who maybe have a rental or have some houses. And one of the reasons most investors want to scale is because they realize how difficult it is to manage, two or three houses by themselves or, a duplex. And trying to picture owning 10 of those feels overwhelming. And you're
That's,
talking about being able to do this virtually, having other people manage this. And I think that that lack of control it gets to a lot of people.
that's
Again, I know for you that there must have been a time where you said, you know what, yeah, I'm done. I'm done doing it this way. I want to try something else. Was there a moment that triggered that for you, or what gave you kind of the confidence or the energy to say, you know what, we're gonna try this virtually. Let's see how this goes, and we'll build from there.
Yeah, so it became a challenge to me. I like challenges, right? You like if you played any sports, you want to challenge yourself to get better and better in anything that you do. I still play pickleball, and I challenge myself every day to get better in pickleball, and played baseball and football for years and basketball and stuff too. So I treat the business no differently. I want to get better at what I'm doing, and if I make mistakes on things, which you're gonna, and you want to make mistakes quickly, so you can overcome them, right? Recognize, all right, this is not going well. What is my escape route out of this one? This rehab is not going well. Do I just market it to another investor to finish it for me? Or do I stick through it and then just resell the property at that point? So I like that challenge personally. And so that's why I don't mind going outside of the market to do it. It does hurt. And it still bothers me when I see the work and I'm like, I could fly there. I could finish the spackle work so much better, make this look so that trim work, but you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not my house, right? It just needs to be good enough to resell. So letting go of that, because I was a perfectionist with my work, letting go of that was the hardest, most difficult thing for me to do, John. You're hitting the nail on the head with that there. But when it comes to something like that, where I'm only seeing pictures, things like that, I can get over it a lot easier, especially when I see the HUD give me 30, 40, 50K profit,
Yeah.
on a resale of the property.
What advice would you give to someone who is struggling with that mental block there that, hey, I don't want to invest out of market because I feel like I need to control it or I need to have, I want to be closer to it. What would you say to them?
This is a challenge that most investors have, and I'm talking seasoned investors. Most don't want to go out of their market, their comfort zone. Everybody wants to stay in their comfort zone. I want to touch and feel the property. And that's a mindset thing. And that really is a mindset. You do not have to. We are in an information age, with new tech and new apps out there. It is so easy to do this business virtually now compared to what it was when I first started. We didn't have these apps. We didn't have these great iPhones, which give incredible pictures and incredible videos. So for me, it was a lot harder back then than it is now. And just to give you a little perspective, when we used to do a lot of wholesaling to other investors, for instance, this one guy in Spokane, Washington, we were selling him the property. He goes, how do you sell out of more? How do you do it without even seeing it? Well, I knew I had a deal when I looked on Zillow and I looked at other 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,500 square foot houses, and mine was far and away the cheapest. I knew it was a deal. Like, it's pretty simple. The numbers tell me that it's a deal. If the numbers don't tell me it's a deal, I'm not going to be doing a deal. So you've got to be driven by the right things, look at the right things, look at the numbers. If it's a deal, you're not going to have a problem moving it in any market anywhere, right? You're always going to be able to sell the property. Just like if you're looking for private money, if you got a deal and you walk into your local RIA and you're looking for private money, there's a million private money people who will lend to you when they know it's a deal. If there's something that's tight, they don't want that. But if they look at it, this house is worth 200,000, you're picking up for 55,000, they're going to be all in on it, right? So you're going to have your lenders there. So you just got to have the confidence to know that you have the deal. If it's not a confident deal, walk away from it. You got to know when to walk away from deals. And I have an acquisition manager right now that works for me, and he brings in the deals now, and I'll just review them and look at them like, nope, this is not a deal. He's like, why? Well, look on the MLS right now, or look on Zillow. Look how many active properties there are in that market. There should not be that much inventory active right now. Something's going on out there. Check what's going on. Sure enough, the unemployment rate is really high there. There was a big company that's moving out. So there's reasons for that, right? So when you're looking at these different markets, this is one of the best pieces of advice I could probably give. If you're looking at another market and you're looking and there's a lot of active properties, avoid that market. It's going to be a tough market for you to move properties in. If you're seeing not many properties for sale, then you're probably going to have a diamond in the rough right there. That's probably the best piece of advice I could give
Yeah.
for finding a deal.
Is there a metric you look at to determine, how many active properties there are? Do you look at like days on market or what do you look at there?
Days on market is big, right? Because generally what we were the last few years, everything was under 30 days in the market moving. Now you're getting things 60, 90, 70 some days on the market and sometimes longer. So when you see those long days on market, that's beware. That's a red flag to me. That's a market I'm worried about. And I ran into that in a small town called Bellevue, Illinois, a little over a year and a half ago, where all of a sudden it went from no inventory to a flood of inventory. And we had just fixed up this property and now we're competing with all these other ones. We thought we were going to sell it for 150. We ended up selling for 120. So, and we ended up making like $2,000 on that property where we thought we were going to make 35, 40, so
Yeah.
keep that in mind when you're looking at things. These markets matter. And that was kind of when COVID had just really started and people started to move and everybody was listing their house and selling.
Yeah, it's great tips and great feedback there. I mean, pay attention to the days on market, especially if you're at a sub market that you're not as familiar with. I mean, that'll give you some great intel of what's going on there. Let's talk about the auction itself, right? Because that's something that I think is a different experience for a lot of people. I know I bought one house on auction, and I did not follow my rules. My wife and I had a game plan going into it. We had our cap number. It got there. We were like, okay, let's push it just a little bit, and we
Yes,
and then we were
yeah.
gonna we were gonna live in the house. We fixed it up, and it worked out. But talking about the auction, right? What are some things that for those folks who have never participated in an REO auction, what do they need to know, and what are some things that can save your bottom if you go this route?
Okay, so the first thing you want to make sure you don't do is get caught up in the excitement because they're fun, right? It's exciting and they're bidding up. And by the way, the seller is bidding usually against you for the most part, or the auctioneer, whether working for auction.com or Zome or Hubsuit, they're bidding against you because there's a reserve price that the seller has and they want to drive you up to that reserve price. So what you got to do, and you got to be really diligent about this, you got to find your MAO, your maximum allowable offer. And let's make simple numbers. Let's use $100,000 house. And I have just recently shifted from 70% of LTV minus repairs to 65% of LTV because I'm just trying to be a little more conservative in markets right now. I just don't know where things are headed. And I know we're going to have a little bit more inventory building this year. So I want to make sure I have that built in extra 5% buffer here. So we go 65% minus repairs. Now we're at 65,000. Let's say it needs 20,000 repairs. Now we're at 45,000. Well, if I want to wholesale this thing, I want to make sure I make 10 grand at least. I can't be at 45. I got to be at 20,000 or 25,000, right? To make sure I'm going to be able to wholesale it because I got to pay closing costs to buy it and closing costs to resell the property. So you got to cover yourself, figure around 4 or 5 grand on even smaller cost homes here and holding time, your interest expense for holding that. So you got to make sure you get your number really dialed in. And if it's 25K, you cannot bid above that. And that's kind of a way to judge whether you're going to even bid on a property or not. Because using that same number, the 100K property is the MAO. If their starting bid is 30,000, well, you're not even starting to bid on this thing, right? Because it's already above what you can really do on this. If your goal is to wholesale. Now, if your goal is to buy it and fix it and flip it, you can go higher. Obviously, you can go a little bit higher with it, but it depends what your end goal is. And if you're a buy and hold guy, honestly, if somebody wants to be a buy and hold person, these bank REOs are great because you're able to pay more than what I am as a wholesaler or a flipper is willing to pay for it because it's all about the cash flow. It's all about the cash flow of the property. So you can do a little less repairs than you're gonna do for a full scale fix and flip because you're just looking to put somebody in there, tenant it, and rent it out.
No, great feedback there. Understanding what your maximum allowable offer is, great feedback there. I love the fact that you went from 70%, which is, everything I've heard when I started getting into real estate, you're taking it down to 65% to add just a little bit more buffer based on where the market is. And then understanding your exit. If you are going to wholesale, you need to bake in your wholesale fee. If you're going to hold it and keep it yourself, then you could pay a little bit more for the property because you're still going to profit. So great feedback there. A lot of listeners may be thinking, okay, that sounds great for a house, but what if I want to buy apartments, even residential size apartments? Like, do you see REOs coming for multifamily? Is that an
They
option?
do. They do. There are multifamily REOs. There's mixed commercial, residential. I bought a 6 unit up in Scranton, PA, a couple of years ago. Was able to move that one easily. Look, they're highly desirable. there's a lot of people looking for the multifamily, even if it's a smaller multifamily, under 10 units, call it, or the mixed use, where you get a little bit of commercial in there as well. But there are some of these out there, and they're not a ton. Obviously, you're going to get them more on 10X, which is, I think, a company that's with auction.com, is a subsidiary, I believe, of it, or somehow connected to it. But their numbers have been insane. Like it's you're better off going to a broker, I think, than what I'm seeing here when I bid on some of these properties. It just gets bid up so quick, too much. It's not worth it. Hasn't been anyway recently.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing to note is that, you can definitely come across some and they look great, but, once you get into the actual auction and the numbers get driven up, it may not work. But nonetheless, I think it's still something to put on people's radar. If you're not familiar
Yeah.
with 10X, at least check it out, look at it, and make sure you understand how those auctions work. I want to come back to something you said at the beginning, right? One of the new strategies you're focusing on, which is pad splitting.
Mhm.
This may be a new concept for a lot of people. So you said you're buying a house and maybe
Mhm.
it's a 4 bedroom, 2 bath house. You're going to renovate it and then change the configuration where now there's 8 bedrooms.
Right.
Explain a little bit more to me about how this works and which markets do you think are ideal to try to implement pad splitting?
So right now they're big in Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville. I believe they're in Atlanta. They're just now going into Philadelphia, which I kind of recommend they don't go into Philadelphia. And I know that market and the kind of regulation that goes on there. It's going to be tough for them there. They just moved into Cleveland recently. They're also in Dallas and Houston. So they're in a lot of the big cities, but you can get them to go into other markets. Like I am in Southwest Florida, so I'm looking at properties in Port Charlotte. I have one in Englewood that we're renovating right now that we're going to be turning into a pad split. And I'm looking to go into the Fort Myers area as well. Naples, where I live, is just too high rent, too expensive, and people aren't going to be able to afford that. So you got to be in the right markets, price point wise. Cape Coral is another good one that I'm going to move into here in Florida as well. You generally looking for the blue collar working class neighborhoods, right? The ones that close to shopping, close to transportation, buses, trains, airports, all those types of things. And sometimes you even get traveling nurses into these properties where you'll get somebody who's going to stay for 2 weeks or a month or a couple of months. But for the most part, your average tenant stays 8 months, which is pretty solid. And if you think about it, compared to a standard single family where you lose the tenant, you could be out a month or two with no money. Where here you have 8 tenants in this property and say you lose two, you're still cash flowing with 6 people in there. Not as well as you would with 8, but you're still cash flowing. So it's a little lower risk. And what it's doing is giving people who can't really afford the rents, because the rents are crazy everywhere right now. And for people who work at Burger King or McDonald's or the dollar store, or Dollar Tree, any of these types of low paid jobs, you can't afford to pay $1,500, $1,800 a month, but you can afford 150 to 200, $250 per week on a room. And what they do is they have a shared kitchen. They have sometimes, most of the time, you're sharing bathrooms. And what they try to do, Pat Split does a really good job and they manage it for you. They will try and get people who work different shifts to share the same bathroom, right? Because then you're not in there on top of each other with this. So they do a pretty good job with that. But you got to figure there's going to be turnover with this. I'm going to my first foray on my first deal will be here in Englewood, Florida. And what I did with this property, this was actually a 3 bedroom, two bath. I think it's 3 bedroom, 2 bath, with 2.5 bath it was, that we turned into an 8 bedroom, a 3 bath, and we turned the garage into 2 bedrooms. We turned the living room and a family room, each in a one extra bedroom. So we were able to get 8 out of it and still have a very large kitchen and a nice big laundry area for them as well. So this is
And
my first foray into it.
I think it's a great concept, right? And the thing that's interesting is that, we've been talking about affordability for so long, and we know that that's a big issue here
Yeah.
in the US, and different markets are attacking it from different angles. And this is just another way of looking at it. Is it fair to say that this is similar to co-living and just maybe another
Yes.
variant of co-living?
It's another variant of co-living, and I like it better than the Airbnb model because, and I just went to one of the IMN conferences here in Miami that was
Okay.
for Airbnbs and vacation rentals and stuff. And the big thing, I wanted to go to kind of get a feel for, because I had these Airbnbs over the years. Regulation keeps pushing more and more, the hotel industry keeps pushing more and more on there to try to push people out of being able to make money with their homes, unfortunately. So it's getting harder in different markets to do this. But affordable housing like this, it's hard for the government to push back on people and say, "Wait, I'm offering affordable housing, which you guys can't offer." Right? How can they push back on you on that one, right? They're going to look really bad. You go to the local newspaper and say the government's pushing back on us. We're trying to provide affordable housing for people. So I think it's a safer place for multiple reasons, obviously with that. And then also we're going into probably most likely a recession this year, right? Which is going to make this even more important to have and more demand for this type of property. So I just think that's the way we're going, the direction we're headed. We have so many people now illegally crossing the border. They need a place to live and they need an affordable place to live, right? This is going to be another option in a lot of different markets because of this here. I think there's just a lot of factors pushing us in this direction, which I think is great for multifamily and is great for the pad split model here. And like I said, there's a lot of multifamily people that have run into so much competition to multifamily that they're adding pad split to it, and they're loving pad split so far, the ones that I've talked to. So especially here in Florida.
I mean, listen, it sounds like another tactic to look into strategy wise. So if you're in one of those markets, want to learn more, you can certainly go and check more from you. Again, if you want to learn more about REO and auction and, wholesaling and some of the great things that Paul just mentioned, you can check out his website, reauctionacademy.com. Again, that's reauctionacademy.com. Right now, we're going to go to our round of insights. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Definitely the 2008 financial crisis. It was, horrible at the time, but the best thing that ever happened. I still look it back as a great thing, because what we learn from failure drives us to better things, right? So it made me shift from going from all full-scale fix and flip to wholesaling, which is much simpler, quicker, better, and puts money in my pocket much quicker than flips do. Flips, you're waiting a quarter or maybe 2 quarters to get your money out. When you're doing wholesaling, you're getting money every month. So that was probably the best thing that ever happened. That just drove me in another direction. Now, a lot of my friends that were in this business quit. They went belly up and they left. But I'm glad I stuck with it. I'm glad I shifted. You got to constantly be shifting in this business for sure.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I'm going to give you a couple of different ones. So redfin.com, using for data. You can look at data, all different parts of the country, the real estate data. Altos Research is another great one. He's got his own channel on YouTube. He gives up he weekly gives the housing market update, shows inventory, shows how it goes up and down, where the trends are heading. That's a great resource there. Realty Track is a really solid one too. That one you can look at foreclosures, pre-foreclosures, and all kinds of other, and you can do some comping on that one as well. Zillow is tremendous. Look, Zillow has improved so much over the years for comping properties, and they get that pretty quickly, and they update those solds really, really quick. So those have been some of the best resources. Our acquisition manager and we use Zillow for the most part. We verify with realtor comps, but we use Zillow to give us our basic, understanding of the market.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
I think for anybody, whether you're new or especially if you're new or experienced, I think everybody should read Rich Dad, and not just the original Rich Dad, which is just tremendous because it shifts your mindset, but he's got a series of different books in there. He's got like an accountant advisor that has written a great book. I'm trying to remember, his name is Tom something.
Tom Wright.
Yes, so good. And I think he has his own channel potentially on YouTube too. Just really good. Tom, we are right. So those are two I would recommend for sure. $100,000 Offers is a great book. I don't know whether you heard of that one. That's a great book to change your mindset on things. And that one's more of a guy who's trying to sell different products or different things, but it's a good sales type book to just change your mindset, because look, this business is about selling as well.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Well, my morning coffee, I like to have my morning coffee and sit out in my lanai right out here and look at the pond and just get my mind clear and focus on what I'm going to do this day. Like each and every day, I think it's really good to do that. It's kind of like almost a meditation type thing, but it gives me that caffeine boost that I want to get. It gets my brain going. and lets me set up my game plan for each day.
All right. Give me your number one insight for getting REO auction properties.
Number one insight as far as, and what do you mean by that? If you want to
Give me your best tip. Give me your number one tip. The one thing, if you could tell anyone, if you want to get auction properties, here's the one thing you've got to do.
If you want to get auction properties, one, you do need to get some money and capital behind you, right? Because you need to take these properties down. So make sure you get somebody who is a good money person, whether it be a private lender, to support you, because you're going to find deals. Like most of our students find 1 to 3 deals their first month. So you need to have that money in advance and be ready to hit the ground rolling, because you don't want to find a deal and not be able to fund the deal.
Love it. All right, let's lighten the mood. You have moved to Florida. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
My favorite place to grab a bite to eat. And I'm going to go, I'm trying to remember the name of this place, the Whiskey House. It's great. They got this Nashville hot chicken mac and cheese. It is so good. Plus they have good bourbon there. So that is my favorite place here in Naples. It is just delicious.
Naples, the Whiskey House. Sounds like a great choice.
And if I go fast food, Chick-fil-A, man. I can eat 100 nuggets. They're so good.
Hey, there's a reason they're so popular, right?
They got
Paul,
that right. Yeah.
Great information, man. Really enjoyed our conversation today. You know, you talked about your background in banking and how you started flipping on the side, making 30K on that first deal. Ultimately, that led you to going full time into real estate, flipping, doing some wholesaling, reversing kind of that mix and doing mostly wholesaling and just holding on to a handful of properties, and now building out your portfolio where you've incorporated more of the pad split as well. You gave us great feedback on what it is to get these bank-owned properties, what you need to know, what you need to do to navigate that landscape, to prepare yourself, and how to evaluate these deals and opportunities. Again, if anybody is interested in learning more about getting these bank-owned properties, they should go to your website, reauctionacademy.com. Again, it's reauctionacademy.com. Paul, I want to thank you again for being a great guest, coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Have a great one yourself.